Once upon a time, an author by the name of Ernest Hemingway said, "Write drunk, edit sober." Hemingway, Edgar Allan Poe, Stephen King, and Brian Griffin are all famous authors known to have dealt with addiction to alcohol in their lifetimes. And first of all, before I get into the fun of this video, yes, addiction is a serious topic, and you should take it seriously. And if you feel you are addicted, seek help. With so many famous alcoholic authors, it makes sense that the alcoholic author stereotype has become so popular these days. Which has caused me to ask the question, is it just a stereotype, or does alcohol actually help you become a better writer? And that's what I aim to find out in this video. At this point in filming, I've had a couple beers. To test if I'm a better writer when I drink, I'm going to write a flash fiction story in true Hemingway fashion. And then tomorrow, when I'm sober, I'm going to read it. I was kind of struggling to come up with an idea on what to write about, and I decided to take a break on YouTube, which is when I started watching all these videos of the small claims, divorce courts, and that type of stuff. And I thought, why not write a short story about a small claims court? And I figured to make it easier for you, the viewer, to compare my drunk writing to my sober writing, I would add this story to my collection of short stories about the end of the world that I've basically been posting every single week. I feel like I didn't explain that right. What I was saying was I'm currently in a challenge to write a short story every single week this year, and I'm currently in week 4. So I figured, why not post this flash fiction as a bonus story? Anyway, I don't know if that made any sense, but I'm going to write my flash fiction about a small claims hearing that happens weeks after the world doesn't end now. And tomorrow, sober me will wake up, read it, and react to it for your enjoyment. That is, if I don't fall asleep 5 minutes after I start writing, which is a strong possibility. But yeah, let's get writing. Alright, full disclosure, I totally just took a break to watch some Judge Judy clips on YouTube, but now I'm gonna get started writing. No more distractions. I feel like a little extra inspiration can't hurt. For reference, it's 3 a.m. right now, but to be honest, that's not really any different from any of my sober writing sessions anyway, so yeah, I gotta work on the whole sleep schedule thing. But that's a later problem. I kinda want chicken nuggets. So eventually, this drunk idiot finally got to writing the story. He kind of went a little bit over the 1,000 words for a typical flash fiction, but that's okay. He also took a strategic nap here and there, but that's okay because at the end of the day, I woke up the next day to a short story that I could react to. So last night's writing session was pretty much a disaster. I ended up finishing around 6 a.m. I don't want to be too critical of it though until I actually read what I wrote last night. Because who knows, maybe Hemingway is right. Maybe I created some drunk magic. I seriously doubt it though. Now for today, I'm just going to be reading the story, but I will eventually be editing it and putting it onto Wattpad. However, I always think it's a good idea to put your work aside and wait a little bit before you come back and edit it. That way it's not fresh in your mind. Even though I was pretty drunk when I wrote the story, I do have a pretty good idea of what I wrote in the story. I will post it at some point though, and those of you who are reading Welp Now What on Wattpad, the story I've been updating every single week, it'll be a fun little Easter egg for you. And once I post the edited version, you can compare it to the version I'm going to read to you right now. Bear with me, reading out loud is one of my weaknesses. Also, if you'd rather read the story for yourself, be sure to go down to the comments. I'm going to put it down there. I would put it in the caption, but I don't think it will fit. Without any further ado, I would like to read to you Silence in the Court. When I post this as a chapter of Welp Now What, I'm probably going to change that name. Will the plaintiff now rise? The judge said, looking over to the right of the courtroom. Mr. Edwards, is it? Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor, Edwards responded, fixing his tie as he stood behind his podium. Would you like to give an opening statement? The judge asked. Edwards nodded. I would, Your Honor, he stated before clearing his throat. I am here today because of the disagreement between myself and Miss Alvarez over the overdue rent payment she owes. For the past 7 years, Miss Alvarez has been one of my tenants, and until now there has not been a single issue. However, in the months before the impact of Salvador, she refused to make those payments, citing her desire to spend the money elsewhere, considering the circumstances. I spelled that wrong. Considering the circumstances, and being the nice person I am, it did not raise an issue on those final 3 months. However, in the time since, I have yet to receive those payments, or the 2 monthly payments that were due since the asteroid did not hit. I am here asking. I told you already, I'll pay when I get a job, Miss Alvarez interrupted. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find work in this market? Oh no, you don't, because you've never worked a day in your life. You bleep. Added a bleep there. The judge slammed down the hammer. It's a gavel. Order. May I remind the defendant not to respond until I address them directly. Alvarez nodded. The judge turned their attention back to Edwards and gestured for him to continue. Thank you, Your Honor. As I was saying, I am looking for the court to aid me in getting the funds for the rent that I am rightfully owed. The judge turned their attention to Alvarez. Does the defendant have an opening statement? First of all, you told me not to worry about the three bills from before Salvador. It doesn't matter if Armageddon happened or not. A deal's a deal. Second of all, whoa, the judge said. Please speak calmly and direct your statement towards me, not the plaintiff. I'll be asking the questions as needed. Alvarez turned her attention to the judge. She was not dressed as properly as the plaintiff, but she did look civil. I find myself here to argue my side against Mr. Edwards' claim that I owe him $9,500 for the 5 months of rent I have not paid. Not only did Edwards originally waive the rent for the 3 months before the apocalypse, but he also illegally raised the rent after the asteroid vanished. I have evidence of both the raise in price and that he initially waived the rent. I hope the court considers these facts here. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge turned to Mr. Edwards. $9,500 for 5 months. Is that the correct dollar amount? Edwards nodded. $1,500 for the original 3 months and $8,000 for the 2 after Salvador did not hit. In addition, there were also damage to the property during the end of the world festivities that I would like appraised to add on to. Festivities? Alvarez blurted out. You were there, you fat pig. Most of the damage is your fault. Silence, the judge ordered. First of all, once again, Miss Alvarez, please wait your turn to speak. I will not ask nicely a third time. The judge pointed to a large police officer to her left. The judge then turned to Mr. Edwards. Now, you should have added any appraisals you wanted done before you came to the court. As for the rent, are you admitting to raising the rent from $500 to $4,000 per month? Your Honor, since the apocalypse didn't happen, inflation has been devastating. Even at $4,000, I feel like it's too low for... I didn't ask for questions. I just want you to confirm or deny that statement, the judge emphasized. Do you have the proper paperwork to raise the rent? There was silence in the courtroom. Miss Alvarez smirked. Do you have the paperwork that legally allowed you to raise the rent exponentially with such short notice? The judge repeated. Once again, there was silence. Well, right off the bat, you don't have the paperwork, especially considering the recent legislation aimed to keep prices from rising in the panic. I'm going to have to reject your initial valuation of what you are owed and lower it to $2,500, the judge said. Is that clear? Mr. Edwards rolled his eyes and called out, But, Your Honor, only to be shut down by the gavel being slammed down. I used gavel that time. I guess I remembered what it was called. Now for that $2,500, the judge started. Am I correct when I say Ms. Alvarez would like to protest the $1,500 the plaintiff claims you owed from before the asteroid vanished? Yes, Your Honor, Ms. Alvarez confirmed. But not the $1,000 from after. Ms. Alvarez shook her head. No, Your Honor. The judge gestured for Ms. Alvarez to speak, asking, Why is it you think the $1,500 should not be paid? Before we knew the apocalypse would not happen, I went to Mr. Edwards and asked if we could waive the rent, as I want to use the money to buy stuff to help enjoy my final days on Earth. Of course, with inflation, it could not buy much, but still Edwards not only agreed to waive the money, but he also offered to spend the end of the world together, which we did, Your Honor. It was only after things didn't end and we broke things off that he decided to demand the initial money and charge me rent. That's bull, Edward called out. Silence, the judge hollered. Returning focus to Alvarez, the judge asked, Do you have any proof of this agreement? Miss Alvarez nodded. I have text receipts, gathering the papers and bringing them to the front of the courtroom where the judge sat. After looking at these papers for a few moments, the judge turned to Edwards and asked, Are these messages you? The security guard took the papers and walked them over to Edwards. Edwards took the papers, glanced at them, and instantly protested. Yes, but I sent these messages assuming the world was ending. What need did I have for the money when an asteroid was going to wipe us off the face of the planet anyway? Now that it didn't happen, I deserve compensation for the months that she was living free on my property. Free, Alvarez called out. You spent half those nights in my bed, so don't act like... Inappropriate, the judge called out, and irrelevant to this case. Regardless of the nature of your sexual relationship, it is clear that Edwards did agree to waive those 3 payments. Termination of that sexual relationship is not grounds to raise the rent or demand the initial payments. I understand you made that decision to waive those payments, assuming we would not be here today, but that is beside the point. An agreement is an agreement. You cannot change your mind because you have a moment of clarity down the line. The defendant has it in writing. The judge turned to Alvarez. I order you to pay the plaintiff $1,000 for the 2 months of rent since the asteroid vanished. Alvarez pumped her fist while Edwards lowered his head to the podium. As for the damages, the judge said, you do not have a monetary appraisal, so I will not bother to look at the photographs. You can have them appraised and returned to the small claims court if you cannot agree on a reasonable compromise. Don't waste my time, though, the judge threatened. The defendant has already mentioned that you caused the damage. I don't appreciate lies in my courtroom. Edward raised his hand as if he was in grade school. Your Honor, he pleaded. Court dismissed, the judge announced. slamming the gavel one final time before walking away from the podium and exiting the office out back. There was another case scheduled in 15 minutes. The court was more booked than ever before, and the cases kept on piling up. I feel like Court Dismissed would be a better title here. Anyway, now that I've read it out loud, I have to say, honestly, this story wasn't that bad, although for 1,300 words, it took me way too long to write. So, drinking definitely slowed down my pace there. I will say, though, I honestly don't think I would have tackled a story idea like this if I wasn't drinking. Sure, I could have come up with a small claims court, but I don't think I would have been confident enough to write one without having enough knowledge. I think I would have been too hesitant, and I would have spent, even though I did spend some time researching small claims courts in the form of watching episodes of Judge Judy and other shows, I wasn't afraid to take risk and write dialogue for the judge character. While typically, if I was sober, I would be pretty hesitant to write a character that I wasn't really familiar with. And I think it's great that I took this opportunity to get out of my comfort zone and write something that I normally would have hesitated to do. Maybe I should write drunk and edit sober more often. Not as like a regular thing. I don't think I would ever finish my book if I did this all the time. But more as a fun writing experiment once in a while. Anyway, that's about all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like because it really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more writing videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to write and drink responsibly.